Money's not the end goal. Money is the means to the end. And so my goal is for my clients to be able to spend more time focusing on their life and what they want that life to look and feel like.
Well, hey, welcome back to the Amanda Kaufman Show. And this episode is so good because you get to meet my friend Allie. Allie Beckmann is an absolute genius when it comes to financial planning. And she has such a unique take with finances and wealth building and all of those good things. And hey, you know, if you're building a business, if you're thinking about building a business, or if you even know somebody who is wanting to do that and also wanting to improve their financial position as they do it, doing finances the smart way, not the hope it works out way, you're going to want to really tune into this episode. So Allie, welcome to the show.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
I'm so glad you made the time. Look, so dear friend that's listening, like Allie, she blew me away because I can't stop talking to her. Like we have budgeted for a short introductory episode here, but don't be surprised if the 4-hour version comes out real soon. So Allie, why don't you just take 30 seconds and share with us, like, what is it that you do and why is it a little different than what you would normally get?
Yeah. So I am a financial advisor, a financial planner. So what that means in my practice is that I take a really comprehensive and holistic approach to financial planning, meaning I'm looking at the full picture of financial planning, which includes cash flow, savings and debt, insurance, investments, banking systems, taxes, estate planning, retirement planning, right? The whole shebang there. But I integrate my background as a trauma-informed and behavioral coach into the planning process so that, one, we're making it safe to talk about the emotional side of money because our emotions impact our behavior, and our behavior directly impacts our progress and our ability to actually implement the plan. So not only is it a holistic experience from the kind of traditional financial planning side, but it's truly a holistic experience where we really put a lot of time and effort into cultivating that human side of the financial plan, which in my opinion should be the thing that drives the plan and the strategy itself. So that's what makes us a little different.
I love how you talk about it as well, because I just know so many people, and I would not be telling the truth, and I'm a truth teller if I didn't admit that I also opted out, right? Because so many financial planners and financial planning types, like, it can be a little stodgy. It can be a little very, very intimidating, bureaucratic. And so I love your angle of the human side of it. And also just like so super curious about that because I know a lot of people do opt out. What was your aha that you needed to bring your coaching capability into your financial world? Like, how did you learn that?
Yeah, so largely informed by my own journey, and same as you, Amanda, I opted out. I used to be a working artist. I was a theater artist and a teaching artist for 15 years, primarily working in a lot of social justice spaces. So maybe surprisingly, I wasn't making a ton of money.
What? The social entrepreneur artist was not making a lot of money.
Surprise.
That's the reason that people tell me that they're not. And I'm like, goodness, when you have less, that makes this more important.
Yes. And so to that point, you know, I didn't realize I had been opting out of financial advice until a lot of things started changing in my life. COVID was a huge catalyst for me to really get real about what was and wasn't working in my life, and not prioritizing my own financial stability was a huge piece of that. Finance ended up finding me. Interestingly enough, I didn't say, I'm going to go be a financial planner, but I realized that I I needed my own education because I never felt like I belonged in the space asking for, financial advice beyond good savings and credit habits that I learned from my parents. And that was the extent of it. So I think having my own direct experience that was not that long ago of feeling excluded from the traditional advisory world. And then also having a background in studying systems of oppression and social justice for 15 years. I'm looking at this industry differently than a lot of advisors, and I'm seeing a lot of the ways that this industry is built to only serve the people who are already wealthy or help people who are already wealthy, hoard more of their money. And so that doesn't resonate with me. And so I just found an opportunity to combine my drive to make social impact and spread equity and empowerment in this world. I saw a huge opportunity in the financial industry to just do things differently. And I've spent, those 15 years in the arts and in the health and wellness space, really getting deep into the social, emotional, and behavioral side of being a human. And I love that side of humans. And so again, I saw a huge gap in the way the industry approaches planning in that it doesn't tend to make space for the emotional side of money. However, for the consumer, for most of us, money is mostly emotional. And so, like I said in the beginning, if we're not making space for it, there's a really good chance then that those underlying relationships and behaviors are ultimately going to prevent us from making real progress or optimizing the pace at which we can make progress. And so not only, I think, does it feel better for my clients to know that they're safe to bring their full self to the conversation and the relationship, actually optimizes their progress because we're making space for their full experience. When you feel safe, you receive information better, you learn faster, and you're more able to take those steps forward, take a new risk, make a new choice, and start making real progress toward growth.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And that progress can really become significant leverage, especially the sooner you start and the more time you give yourself to run the strategies. As you were talking, I'm like, goodness, I think this show is going to be a big why entanglement, in a beautiful way. Because as you were talking, I'm like, dang, that's actually why I'm so bullish on the alternative education industry, and why I get so excited about doing shows like this, like doing the podcast, doing the social content that I do. I don't do it because, I've got to be the next Kardashian. Please don't want to be the next Kardashian for lots of different reasons. But what really inspires and motivates me is like when I really believe at my core, when people know better, they do better. But a lot of that knowledge or a lot of that understanding about how the world works is systemically really tied up in the old way. Right, that is customized for the people who already had access to it in a lot of ways, And so if you're coming from a background where maybe you were not part of the conversation when money was discussed, and this goes for like money, for the entrepreneurial education that I do, for the confidence and the high performance and all of that good stuff, it all really comes back to this idea that when you know better, you can do so much better. But it does require that intentionality, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, education is such a big gap for people. And what I see too, particularly with women, it's a lack of education then leads to a lack of confidence, and then you're less likely to take risk. I have watched my clients increase their capacity for risk or taking new chances, trying new things, stepping outside their comfort zone the more they learn. So just providing a space for accessible financial literacy is huge. But what also I found interesting in what you just said is like what motivates me. That's also something that I think is really overlooked in the planning, right? It's not just the numbers. The numbers need to be informed by something. And so I spend a lot of time with my clients figuring out who they are as people and what their values are so that their plan is working directly to help them live in greater alignment with their values and with their priorities, and to actually help them reach goals that are meaningful and significant to them. Because if we're just focusing on money and making more money, at the end of the day, that's not a real motivator. It's too shallow to be sustainable. And so if we can realize that it's not actually about the money, it's about your life. And then we can get better at supporting clients in that life planning phase. Then it's my job to figure out how are we using money as the tool to facilitate that life. Money's not the end goal. Money is the means to the end. And so my goal is for my clients to be able to spend more time focusing on their life and what they want that life to look and feel like. And then I'll take care of the how. What is that going to look like financially in a way that still aligns with your values and makes sense for who you are as a person and where you're starting from?
I love that metaphor of it being a tool. As a coach, I really couldn't agree more. So many things we externalize our success and we externalize our success markers. And like, it doesn't even take a whole coaching session, y'all, to figure out that like there's different value systems that motivate people in particular ways. And, if you're unaware of those patterns or beliefs that maybe you just sort of grew up with, or you were steeped in, or maybe your current friend circle still has these beliefs, like you don't even really realize, I don't think, how money can be, yes, a tool, but it can be like a tool for your imprisonment. And I know that sounds really dramatic, but it's so true. I mean, how many times have you heard someone that say, well, I can't afford that, or I can't do that because, oh, that's too expensive, or I can't change my soul sucking job because of the money or the benefits. Yeah. And, kind of walking through the world as if you have no options in how to live your life. Mm-hmm. And like, goodness, this is why we could have a 4-hour long episode, Allie, because the money really does touch everything, doesn't it?
It really does, which is why, again, I think there's such an opportunity in the financial planning world and industry to broaden the perspective and really create a space for clients to talk about all those pieces that money touches. It is both so intimate and personal, and it is also, simply a tool as well. And so it's a nuanced topic, and everyone has their own personal relationship to it. And they deserve to have an advisor who they feel they can be that full, authentic self and have that nuanced conversation with without fear of like being shamed or condescended or talked over.
Oh my gosh, big time. I want to circle back to something you said about risk appetite. And I wanted to circle back on it because what came up for me as you talked about risk in that moment is, a lot of times we assess a risk inaccurately. Like we think it's risky because, well, I've always done it this way. And I'm thinking about, the pattern of living hand to mouth or paycheck to paycheck, right? When you're in that pattern, it can feel risky to make a change or an alteration to what you're doing because it already feels so scarce and so tight. But, when you run the numbers, I have to imagine, and, please validate or invalidate what I'm saying. Sometimes just the change itself feels risky, even if the change isn't objectively, as in you're going to lose money risky, it just feels risky. Do you mind unpacking, first of all, do you agree with that? And then if you do, can you unpack for us, what are the high perceived risk, actually low risk things that you typically work on with a new client?
Interesting. Two very different questions. Mm-hmm. I think, so one, I do agree with you. There is this sense of perceived risk, which we can encounter that when we're approaching growth. And so depending on our awareness of our nervous system and our patterns, I see this a lot with people who are looking to hire a financial planner and it's their first time, having that conversation. It's really hard for people to even schedule a call to have a chat about what's possible. And unfortunately, I've seen a fair amount of people who need the help, recognize they need the help, kind of can't afford not to get the help, and they walk right up to the line and can't cross it because engaging in a relationship like this can feel risky because it's new. And money is tied to so many deeply personal and foundational emotions that it can just get confusing in that kind of how you're reading your internal experience and emotions, right? It can kind of send that signal of risk and fear, and then that means people can back away from it. Mm-hmm. This is why I think having the trauma-informed approach is so important, because the number one methodology of trauma-informed care is creating a safe space, because if we don't feel safe, we won't be able to take a risk. We won't be able to learn. Learning in itself is a risk, because learning, requires a kind of temporary tension, right? And the only way you learn is by figuring out how to resolve that tension. But even that in itself can that's another iteration of growth. And so, just what's happening in our brain, we don't have access to those parts in our brain if we're feeling stuck and unsafe and like we're in survival mode. So when we can create that feeling of safety, then we can have the opportunity to learn, and we can have that opportunity to start taking those steps toward growth, even when they feel risky. So I think, one, what do I work on in terms of helping people with their risk? It's getting started. I mean, I'm a lot of my clients' first financial advisor. And so I love working with people who this is a really big step for them, but they know they're ready, but they need that. They also know that they need that quality of relationship to feel safe. They may not know why exactly, but they know that they need that. And so I love working with people on just helping them really manifest their desire to make financial growth and actually manifest it into real behavior. They're kind of I know I'm ready, but I'm kind of scared and I don't know what to do. And that's why I'm talking to you and hiring you. And so I love when I can catch them in that moment when they recognize that they are ready and it is kind of scary. And so then working together, we're helping them. I mean, who knows on where we'll start, because it depends on where they're starting from, but just helping them get that sense of organization, get a sense of support, the reassurance that we have a plan. And now it's just a matter of following the plan. That in itself just helps people, on a bigger level. It's helping people completely reframe their relationship to money so that they can grow and build their wealth. On a more, micro level, I see it, especially with my female clients, in their investment risk appetite. The more, someone literally said this to me in the fall when we were doing kind of a risk reevaluation. And she said, I was like, your first score that we did when we started working together was way lower. And now I was quite surprised to see your risk score jump up a lot. And she goes, yeah, but I think because I've learned more about just how it works, how investments work, how it works in the context of my plan, I feel more comfortable taking more risk in my investment portfolio because I understand more. So on that level, that's really exciting to see, because that then has real returns and gains inside of it. Obviously we don't want to go past our risk tolerance, but
yeah. And I'm reminded of that saying that fortune favors the bold. And I was thinking about, well, boldness requires what, right? If you want to activate more appetite for risk, and I can see this applying also if you're building a business or you're changing your marketing strategy or just really any kind of change. The reason why it's so hard for most people is because you're proving yourself wrong. And I mean, who wants to be told that they're wrong? No one.
Yeah.
Right? Ever. So handling that is really important. But you're going to feel more bold if you know what the realm of possibilities are, if you understand the system, if you have a partner that you can be am I crazy? No, you're not crazy. Okay, cool. And to your point, just a plan, because even, there've been a few times in my life that I can point to, I had a plan, we ran the plan. It was not a great plan. But boy, I learned so much because I had the plan. I could anchor back. Where did we go wrong? Where did reality, knock us off course? So then the next time we sat down to do the plan, it was a slightly dumb plan.
Yes. And that's something, I update my clients' plans every 6 months because it's going to change. We're going to learn as we go. And again, to your point, the longer we work together, the more we can get specific on what are your biggest fears? What are the biggest risks to the success of this plan? And then what is within our control to mitigate that risk? So, it's this mix of education to increase the appetite and tolerance for risk, but then it's also being smart about what is within our control to put in place so that if the worst case scenario for you does happen, we've thought about it and we already have a plan in place or protection in place to minimize or mitigate that risk altogether, which can then, again, it's just increasing that sense of safety, which can then allow us to take more risk in another area.
Love that. Allie, what is the best way for people to follow you?
LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a really great place. I'm really active on LinkedIn. So it's Allie Beckmann, RFA on LinkedIn. So connect with me there and shoot me a DM. And if you want to chat further, we can go from there.
Amazing, amazing. And dear listener, you'll find all of Allie's details and information in the show notes around this video, or if you're listening to this, in the show notes for the audio. And don't forget that if you want to catch another episode, the best thing to do is subscribe. So you'll always get the newest episode pushed right out to your device wherever you happen to be listening to us. And also, if this was helpful, 2 things. 1, pay it forward with a review, right? If you take the 30 seconds to write a review for the show, it helps people that randomly come across it choose us. And for that, we absolutely thank you. But the second thing is just more directly. I'm sure you've got 3 friends that would really benefit from this very conversation. Maybe they've been talking about wanting to get more in control of their finances, and surrounding themselves with people who kind of geek out and nerd on this stuff might be a good next step. So just grab the link to this show, send it to them through the DMs, through the text message, and you can be a hero for a day. Until the next time that I see you, we'll see you on another episode of the Amanda Kaufman Show. Allie, I hope you'll come back. I'm putting you on the spot. You gonna come back sometime?
Please. Yes, I feel like we just scratched the surface.
It's just tiny little scratch. I'm like, goodness, we need to have themed episodes. We got a whole thing. So thank you so much for your time today. And until I see you again, dear listener, make sure you do what matters.